In the still hours before sunrise, when the world feels suspended between yesterday and whatever comes next, Nancy sat at the small wooden desk that had followed her through decades of moves, milestones, and private reckonings. The house was quiet in the way only long-time homes are, filled with familiar creaks and memories that feel almost alive. At 84, her hands moved more slowly than they once had, but her thoughts were clear, steady, and insistent. This was not a letter born of urgency or fear, but of honesty long deferred. She had written countless notes before, birthday cards, encouragements, gentle reminders, yet this one felt different. It was addressed to her daughter Savannah, not as a public figure or accomplished professional, but as the child she had loved fiercely and raised deliberately. What poured onto the page was not instruction, but confession, the truth she had carried quietly for years. What she finally allowed herself to say. Nancy began simply, without ceremony, writing not as a mother giving advice, but as a woman setting something down at last. She admitted that she had spent much of her life presenting herself as stronger than she felt, believing that steadiness was the greatest gift she could offer her children. She wrote that she had mistaken endurance for invincibility and silence for grace. In the letter, she acknowledged that there were moments she had been afraid, moments she had doubted herself, moments she had wanted to ask for help but chose not to. She told Savannah that the calm confidence she tried to model was sometimes a shield, not a truth. This was not an apology framed in guilt, but an offering of clarity. Nancy wanted her daughter to understand that strength is not the absence of vulnerability, but the courage to live alongside it. The roots of a woman shaped by responsibility. Nancy traced her own story back to her childhood, describing a life shaped by routine, faith, and the quiet expectations of a close-knit community. Raised to believe that character mattered more than comfort, she learned early that showing up reliably was a form of love. She wrote of classrooms where discipline was prized, of family dinners where everyone pulled their weight, of a world that rewarded composure. These lessons were not cruel, she explained, but practical, formed by an era that valued self-sufficiency. Over time, those values became instinct. She learned to manage difficulty privately and present calm publicly. In the letter, she acknowledged how deeply those habits had settled into her bones, shaping how she approached motherhood. What she once saw as preparation, she now recognized as a narrow version of strength, useful but incomplete. Love, marriage, and the shape of shared dreams. Nancy wrote warmly about the early years of marriage, about partnership built on faith, curiosity, and mutual respect. She described love not as grand gestures, but as shared plans and quiet understanding. Together, they imagined a life that balanced work, family, and service, believing that consistency would carry them through anything. When responsibilities multiplied, Nancy leaned into order and purpose, convinced that stability was the greatest gift she could offer her children. In the letter, she reflected on how deeply she valued being dependable, how she measured her success by how well she kept things running. She admitted that in striving to hold everything together, she rarely paused to ask how the weight was shaping her. Love, she realized later, does not require constant proof. It flourishes most fully when allowed to breathe. Motherhood and the standards. She set. Writing to Savannah, Nancy spoke directly about motherhood, acknowledging the pride she felt watching her children grow into capable adults. She admitted that she held herself and them to high standards, believing those standards would prepare them for a demanding world. She wrote that she praised achievement readily, but sometimes struggled to affirm effort alone. In hindsight, she saw how easily expectations can become invisible rules, absorbed rather than questioned. Nancy explained that she believed she was teaching resilience, yet she now wondered if she had also taught restraint at the cost of tenderness. She wanted Savannah to know that any moments of perceived distance were never born of disappointment, but of a belief that competence was the clearest expression of love. The letter was her attempt to widen that definition, even if belatedly. The daughter she watched. Become herself, Nancy devoted a section of the letter to observing Savannah's journey, not as a resume of accomplishments, but as a portrait of character. She wrote of admiration for her daughter's discipline, intelligence, and integrity, qualities she recognized as both inherited and earned. She confessed that she often saw herself reflected in Savannah's composure, and that this reflection stirred both pride and concern. Nancy acknowledged that she had sometimes mistaken her daughter's steadiness for ease, forgetting how much effort that steadiness required. She wanted Savannah to know that her worth was never contingent on performance, even if her actions had not always communicated that clearly. In words both tender and firm, she told her daughter that being capable was not the same as being complete, and that rest was not a reward, but a right. Faith as shelter, not armor. Faith had always been central to Nancy's life, and the letter returned to it not as doctrine, but as lived experience. She wrote that faith had sustained her through uncertainty, offering structure when life felt unpredictable. Yet she admitted that she sometimes used faith as armor rather than shelter, focusing on endurance over surrender. Nancy reflected on prayers whispered in private, on moments when belief carried questions alongside comfort. She wanted Savannah to understand that faith was not meant to erase doubt or grief, but to hold space for them. Strength, she wrote, did not mean standing alone. It meant trusting that one could lean without falling. In sharing this, Nancy hoped to give her daughter permission to approach faith not as a mandate for composure, but as an invitation to honesty. What she regretted, and what she didn't. Nancy was careful not to frame her reflections as regret, but she did name the things she would approach differently if given the chance. She wrote that she wished she had spoken more openly about fear, about uncertainty, about the moments she did not have answers. She wished she had modeled rest as deliberately as she modeled responsibility. Still, she was clear that she did not regret choosing motherhood, service, or devotion. Her life, she believed, had been full, meaningful, and rooted in love. What she sought now was not absolution, but understanding. She wanted Savannah to see her not as an unyielding figure, but as a whole person, shaped by context, belief, and hope. In that recognition, Nancy believed healing could quietly begin. The legacy. She hoped to leave. Toward the end of the letter, Nancy shifted from reflection to intention. She wrote that she hoped her legacy would not be one of perfection, but of sincerity. She wanted to be remembered as someone who tried, who cared deeply, and who showed up consistently, even when uncertain. Nancy emphasized that kindness outlasts accomplishment, and that presence matters more than polish. She told Savannah that if there was one truth she wished she had spoken more often, it was this: love does not need to be earned repeatedly. It exists first, and effort grows from it, not the other way around. The letter was her way of placing that truth gently into her daughter's hands, trusting that it would find its time and meaning. A letter that changed. How it was read. When Savannah eventually shared reflections inspired by her mother's words, she did so not as revelation, but as gratitude. The letter had not rewritten the past, but it had reframed it, allowing space for compassion on both sides of their bond. What Nancy left behind was not instruction, but release, permission to soften where once there had only been resolve. Her story, traced from early roots through motherhood and quiet faith, lived on not in public recognition, but in the lives she shaped. The letter became a reminder that even the strongest figures carry untold stories, and that love, when spoken plainly, can loosen burdens carried for decades. In the end, Nancy's greatest gift was not her endurance, but her honesty, offered gently at last.